Welcome back to America First, Patriots. I'm your host, and today we're diving into another completely biased hit piece against President Trump that's been making the rounds. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're growing fast because Americans are hungry for the truth that the mainstream media refuses to tell you. So I just watched this video from what appears to be another left-wing commentator who's completely lost touch with reality. And I have to respond because the level of dishonesty and spin here is absolutely staggering. This person is claiming that Trump's decisive action against Iran was somehow a failure and that Americans don't support it.
The Trump administration understands that as much as they try to spin these attacks that they launched against Iran last weekend, nobody's buying it. New polls have come out showing that a vast majority of Americans do not support the attacks. And yes, that includes Republicans. That includes a vast majority of independents and obviously a huge majority of Democrats. But even Republicans are like, yeah, this wasn't a good idea. You went over there, kicked the hornet's nest, and then you tripped as you were running away. That wasn't smart. Nevertheless, Donald Trump insists that this was the greatest thing the military's ever done. He has spent this entire past week on social media having meltdown after meltdown after meltdown because this issue broke him worse than any other issue we have ever seen. Like, he's reacting worse to this than when he first got indicted. He's reacting worse than this, to this than when he got convicted. He is freaked out about this more than when he got shot. That's how much this is getting to him because it was a total failure. And it shows the rest of the world that the U.S. cannot keep you safe. Not that we were keeping him safe by bombing Iran, but you get the point. We can't even do this. How can we expect to help our friends and allies when they're actually in trouble? So Donald Trump assembled a crack team of administration officials and intelligence officials and sent them to the Senate and the House on Thursday and Friday, respectively. And the idea was to give these people an official classified briefing about what really happened. You know, how Donald Trump went over there and kicked ass. May as well drop the bombs himself. It was so good. The only problem is, in these classified intelligence briefings, there were several, and the documents that they've made available to Senate and House members, there are several things missing because the administration is engaged in a massive cover-up. According to a report from ABC News, it turns out that the administration, in their briefings and in the documents they made available, barely made anything available at all. In fact, the administration was kind of open about the fact that they're engaged in a cover-up, which is an ironic statement, but nevertheless, they're like, yeah, we're not going to show you everything. We're not going to give you all of the classified information. Oh, and by the way, we know you all want to talk to Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. We're not going to allow that at all. So the Director of National Intelligence, who back in March already refuted the administration's claims that Iran was making bombs, she wasn't allowed to go because Donald Trump is so pissed off at her because of that resurfaced March testimony in front of Congress. So you don't get to talk to the Director of National Intelligence, who would maybe tell you the truth about this. We're not going to show you all of the documents and the images and the satellite footage and all of that would actually confirm what we're saying. Basically, you got to take our word for it. All right. That's the best we're going to give you, is like, we're super serious that we obliterated those sites that you can probably just get on Google Earth and see that, wait a minute, they're still there. That's what the administration is doing. This administration has told us repeatedly, long before the Iran attack, that they're the most transparent ever. But they're not. They're the most accessible ever. And there is a world of difference. Transparent means being honest and being open and sharing all of the intelligence. But what they consider to be transparency is the fact that Donald Trump loves to talk to reporters. This is not transparency. This is still a cover-up. You're not giving them all of the intelligence, which, by the way, they are in fact entitled to. You're not allowing them to talk to the director of national intelligence, who already said you're telling a lie, which they're also entitled to. You're withholding key pieces of information for very obvious reasons. We know that you failed. We know that you've lied. You know, you think you're pulling a fast one on us, but everybody in the country is sitting here like, dude, we know you're not telling the truth. But he's doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on it because that is the only thing he knows how to do. He is backed into a corner. He is mentally falling apart over this, and the fallout is not going to go away anytime soon.
So I just watched this video from what appears to be another left-wing commentator who's completely lost touch with reality. And I have to respond because the level of dishonesty and spin here is absolutely staggering. This person is claiming that Trump's decisive action against Iran was somehow a failure and that Americans don't support it. Let me break down what's actually happening here and why this narrative is complete garbage. First, let's talk about these so-called polls showing Americans don't support the Iran strikes. I'd love to see the methodology on these polls because we've seen time and time again how polling can be manipulated to get whatever result the pollsters want. Remember how the polls said Hillary Clinton was going to win in 2016? Remember how they said the red wave wasn't coming in 2024? These are the same people now telling us that Americans don't support strong action against the world's leading state-sponsored terrorism. The reality is that real Americans, patriots who understand what strength looks like on the world stage, absolutely support President Trump taking decisive action against Iran. For decades, Iran has been funding terrorism, threatening our allies, and working to destabilize the entire Middle East. Previous administrations, especially the Obama-Biden administration, showed nothing but weakness toward Iran. They literally sent pallets of cash to the mullahs in Tehran. Trump is finally showing these terrorist-supporting regimes that there are consequences for threatening American interests. Now this commentator is claiming that Trump is having meltdowns on social media. This is rich coming from people who spent 4 years having daily meltdowns every time Trump posted on Truth Social. What they call meltdowns, I call leadership. Trump is defending his administration's actions and explaining to the American people why we took the steps we did. That's what real leaders do. They don't hide in the basement like Joe Biden did during his entire campaign. The most ridiculous claim in this video is that the Iran strikes were a total failure. Based on what evidence? The administration conducted precise, targeted strikes against Iranian military assets that were threatening American personnel and interests. These weren't random bombings. These were surgical strikes designed to send a clear message that America will not tolerate threats against our people or our allies. Then we get to this conspiracy theory about a massive cover-up. Let me explain something about how classified briefings work to Congress. Not every piece of intelligence can be shared publicly, even with members of Congress, because it could compromise sources and methods. This isn't a cover-up. It's called protecting national security. The same people demanding full transparency are often the same ones who leak classified information to the press when it suits their political agenda. Regarding Tulsi Gabbard not being included in certain briefings, there could be dozens of legitimate reasons for this that have nothing to do with covering up failures. Maybe she had scheduling conflicts. Maybe there were security protocols. Maybe the briefings were structured differently than this commentator assumes. But instead of considering reasonable explanations, they immediately jump to conspiracy theories because that fits their anti-Trump narrative. The idea that you can just look at Google Earth to verify military strike damage shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern warfare works. First, Google Earth images aren't real-time. Second, many military targets aren't visible to commercial satellites. Third, the goal of these strikes wasn't necessarily to level buildings, but to degrade specific capabilities and send a message. Success in modern military operations isn't measured by how much rubble you create. What really bothers me about this video is a complete lack of context about Iran's aggression. This commentator acts like Trump just randomly decided to bomb Iran for no reason. Iran has been escalating tensions for months. They've been attacking shipping in the Persian Gulf, threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, advancing their nuclear program, and supporting proxy groups that attack American forces throughout the region. At some point, you have to respond with strength, or these regimes will continue to push until they cross a line that forces a much larger conflict. The real failure would have been doing nothing and allowing Iran to continue its aggression unchecked. That's exactly what the Obama administration did, and it led to Iran becoming more emboldened and dangerous. Trump's approach of peace through strength is exactly what we need. You don't prevent wars by showing weakness. You prevent wars by demonstrating that aggression has consequences. This commentator also seems to think that because Trump is actively defending his administration's actions, that somehow proves the actions were wrong. This is backwards logic. Strong leaders defend their decisions and explain them to the American people. What would be concerning is if Trump just stayed silent and let his critics control the narrative. The broader issue here is that we have a media ecosystem that is so committed to opposing everything Trump does that they will literally side with Iran over their own country. Think about that for a moment. We have American commentators suggesting that striking Iranian military targets was somehow wrong or ineffective, essentially carrying water for a regime that chants death to America and funds terrorist organizations around the world. This is why independent media like America First is so important. The mainstream media and these partisan commentators will never give you the full picture when it comes to Trump's foreign policy successes. They can't admit that his approach of projecting strength while avoiding unnecessary wars actually works. Iran knows that under Trump, there are real consequences for aggression. That's why they were much more restrained during his first term compared to how they acted under Obama and how they're likely to act under future weak leadership. Deterrence works, but only when your enemies believe you're serious about using force when necessary. The fact that this commentator is more upset about Trump's response than about Iran's initial aggression tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. They're more concerned with scoring political points against Trump than they are with American national security. In closing, don't let these partisan narratives fool you. The Iran strikes were a measured, appropriate response to escalating Iranian aggression. Trump's leadership on this issue demonstrates exactly why we need strong, decisive leadership in the White House. The alternative is the kind of weakness that invites more aggression and ultimately leads to larger conflicts.